You can draw this in Procreate. I have another lovely landscape tutorial project for you. Again, I won't be skipping any steps. I will guide you through the entire process. And at the end, I'm sure you will have a result that you'll be proud of. It would be great if you would share it. I always really enjoy browsing through your results. So make sure to share it on Instagram, tag me in the image, not just in the description. But of course, the first step is to first create this painting. I will help you with that. We are working on a canvas that is 3000 by 2000 pixels. The color palette is linked in the description as always. And then all you need is a charged iPad and Apple Pencil and probably some drinks and snacks because we will be spending quite some time together. I can't wait, so let's get started. We'll start off by dropping in a color for our background. We'll grab the second color in the first row and just drag it onto your canvas. Then next, we'll grab this color, the seventh color in the first row, and we'll make a new layer on top of this one. So we'll go to the layer menu and tap the plus. And then for our brush, let's use one of the inking brushes. Let's use the Studio pen. The opacity of this brush should be at 100%, and for the size, you could go for something like 20%, for instance. And then we'll make a line, slightly wobbly. It doesn't need to be a very straight line. And it'll be at like 1/3 of the height, about here. We'll go from the left all the way to the right, like this. And then dragging your color underneath that line. Then we'll make a new layer on top. We'll tap the plus. And this time for our color, we'll grab this one, third color in the third row. And we are going to make our foreground plane where our tree will be. So we'll start a little bit higher than our line here. So we'll start about here and make a slightly wobbly line. We'll go down here and then all the way to the right here. And then dragging the color underneath. Next, we'll make a few more planes. We'll make one underneath this layer. So first tap layer 2 and then tap the plus. And then for our color, let's grab this one, 8th color in the first row. And then make sure to start all the way at the bottom so that our shape that we are going to create will be a closed one. So we'll start about here, then we'll go up here, and then we'll make a shape like this. Go up here, then down, all the way to the right, and then you can drag in the color to fill that shape. Then we'll make a layer on top of this one. So we'll tap the plus again. And then for our color, we'll grab this one, 9th color in the first row. And again, make sure to start somewhere on the edge of your canvas, like here below. Then we'll go up here and make a slightly wobbly line. Go a little bit lower, then up. Go for something like this. And then drag in the color underneath. Next, we are going to make the rocky formation over here, and we will make a new layer on top of this one for that. So let's tap the plus, and then for our color, we'll grab this one. That's the 6th color in the second row. And then we'll start about here, and we can extend a little bit and add some extra stuff. I hope you can see it over here. Add some extra jagged parts. We'll just go along the edge a little bit. Add some extra interesting parts. And then we need to attach the bottom part and still make it a little bit jagged, irregular, and then connect over here. And then you can drag in the color. So now we pretty much have our basic shapes, our planes. Now we are going to add some gradients to them. Let's start with our sky over here on layer 1. And for our brush, we are going to use an airbrush. We'll go to the top here to the soft brush. And for the color, we'll grab this one, 3rd color in the first row. The opacity of the brush is at 60%. Let's make the size bigger. Maybe 15%. Let's check that out. I think that's pretty nice. Now let's go over the lower right part. We'll start over here and very gently lighten up that area. Very gently create that gradient. And we can go over this area again, making that even lighter. So just that lower right area, that will be the lightest part. And now we can make the top area a little bit darker with this color. First color in the first row. We'll go over this top area. Just a little bit like this. You can zoom out a little bit so you don't go over your sliders. So we create a nice gradient in our sky. And if the transition is a bit too harsh, then you can go to the magic wand and then to Gaussian blur and then slide to the right a little bit, making it more soft. I'll go for 20%. And then just tap the magic wand again to get out of there. Now I'd like to do something similar for this layer, layer 2, but when using that soft airbrush, I don't want to go outside of the edges. So we'll tap the layer and turn on alpha lock. Now we can only paint on this area. And for the color, so let's go for this color, that 8 color in the first row, and go over this area. Let's slightly darken it. Also a little bit over here. And what I'd also like to do is soften the edge a little bit. It's a bit too crisp. It's far away, so it'll be more out of focus. So what we can do is turn off alpha lock. We can tap the layer, turn that off, then go to the magic wand and Gaussian blur again. And then slide to the right, making that more blurry. Let's go for 4%. And then tap the magic wand again. Now let's move to the next layer over here, layer 4. I want to add a little bit of texture and color variety here. But first, let's turn on alpha lock. And for the brush, let's go to the drawing brushes over here. And let's use the copperhead brush. And then for the color, let's grab this one. 6th color in the second row, same color as we used for this rock. And the opacity of the brush is at 100%. And let's set the size to perhaps 40. Let's check that out. And let's just make some horizontal strokes like this. Or we can go even bigger. Let's go for 70. A little bit of this darker color. And let's also add a touch of green. We can use this color, 9th color in the first row. Maybe some darker green as well. Let's use this one. It's a bit bluish green. First color in the second row. Just want to add some interest here. And maybe a little bit of this one. 3rd color in the 3rd row. And now we can soften this a little bit by using that soft brush again. And for the color, let's use this one. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. Let's gently go over here and bring those colors together a little bit. Next, we'll move on to our rock here. Let's zoom in so we can focus on it. And then let's go to that layer and tap the plus to make a new layer on top. Now to make sure that whatever we draw here won't go outside of the shape, we can set this layer to clipping mask. It works the same as alpha lock, but now we're on a separate layer. And for our brush, we'll go back to the inking brushes and use the studio pen. And for our color, we'll use this one, 8 color in the 2nd row. Now we can make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 10%. And now we are going to add some shapes to our rock. Let's start here and make a little jagged shape here. We can color that in. And then on this side, color that in. And for instance, over here, this side will be in the light and this left part will be in the shadow. So we'll make a shadow edge. pretty pointy. And over here, let's go up. Just make a jagged shape, up and down, with some openings in it. And make sure to close the shape before you drag in the color. Let me zoom in even more. You can make some pointy parts like this, lines going down and up, making this look like rock. You don't have to make an exact copy. Just make something that is slightly similar with some openings of that darker color. Here I'll go down a little bit. And over here, filling in this bigger gap with some more of this color. And you can either drop in the color with color fill, or you can just color it in by hand. Maybe we have a shape like this over here. And over here, something a bit rounded. Maybe a little bit longer shape here. So until you got something like this, just on that left side of our rock. Next, we'll do something similar for the light part. We'll tap the plus again for a new layer and set that to clipping mask as well. And I will grab a light color. We'll grab this one, 9th color in the 2nd row. And I will make more shapes on this side and leave those gaps. Maybe there's like a triangular gap here. We'll go down. Just make sure that you still see that darker blue through those rocks. Just don't make the entire thing a light yellow. There's some interesting shapes, some cracks. And if you've closed it too much, then of course you can also use the eraser to get rid of some parts. So you can easily just tap and hold the eraser to make it switch to that studio pen. And then you can just make some gaps and fix some parts if it's needed. You can just switch back and forth between your eraser and your brush, adding these shapes to this rock face. It just needs those gaps in between. That will make it look like rock. Some parts where there's shadow. Go down here. This side will also be in the light, mostly those right parts. Maybe a bump over here. Some shapes here with little indents. There's those little parts sticking out, those little lines that'll add some interest. I think this looks pretty good. You could actually make a screenshot at this point if you want to use this as a reference. That way it can be easier to create those similar shapes. Now, the next step is to add a little bit of a gradient to these shapes actually. Let's go to our layer 7 first and set that to alpha lock. So this is a great advantage of using a layer set to clipping mask instead of just turning alpha lock on for that rock layer. Because now we can first use a clipping mask and then use alpha lock just on these shapes. Now let's grab our soft brush again. And then we'll grab this color. That's the 7th color in the 2nd row. And let's add a little bit of that blue to this lower area, just so that we get some nice color variety in that side of the rock. And we'll do the same for the light part. So first we'll tap the layer and turn on alpha lock. And then we'll grab this lighter color, 10th color in the 2nd row. And I want to add that to the top area, making that even lighter. Then let's add some more color to our base rock. And let's do that by going to those drawing brushes and use the copperhead again. And I want to add some green. We use this color for that 9th color in the 1st row. And we need to go to this bottom rock layer. And we'll turn on alpha lock here as well. And then let's add a little bit of green here, very gently on this part of our mountain, of our rock. And I also want to add a little bit of this color, 10th color in the 1st row. Let's make our brush a little bit smaller, 40% or 41, just slipped. And add a little bit of that as well. I also want to add it to this area, to layer 4. So let's go there. And let's add a little bit of that lighter color. I also want to make the transition here a little bit more rough. It's a bit too clean. Now a way to do that can be to add a layer mask to this layer. We can tap it and then add a mask. And now we can paint with black on this layer mask. So let's grab that. Let's double tap here for black. And then on this layer mask with the copperhead brush, we still have that. We can go along the edge a little bit. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller. Let's go for 10%. And we can just go along the edge and just roughen that up a little bit. It'll give a more rough transition. Now let's zoom out. I think the area looks nice. Let's also add a little bit of texture to this background area here on layer 2. Let's first turn on alpha lock, and then let's use our copperhead brush, and let's use some bluish tones. Let's grab this one, 8th color in the 2nd row. Let's make the brush a little bit bigger again. Maybe 25%. And let's lower the opacity a little bit. Let's go for 75%. So we have a little bit more control. We can make the brush a little bit bigger, 50. Let's zoom out a little bit so we can see the edges. Just want some texture. We can also tap and hold our finger on the screen to grab the local color. And you can use that to go over, make it more subtle. You can also grab some blue here. Just want some subtle texture there to give a little bit of an indication that there's stuff there, that there's grass or maybe trees. I think that looks nice. Let's move on to this area over here. First, I like to roughen the edge a little bit of this area. because now it looks way too clean. I'd like to go to the organic brushes and then use, where is it? The mountain ash brush. So first, let's just grab that and let's go to the proper layer. Now, actually, to save some layer space, we could merge the mountain layers. And we can also merge it with this background layer, but just to be sure, I just want to merge the mountain. That way we can always move it around or make changes to the background. But I'm happy with the way the mountain looks, so you can merge those layers. Then let's go to layer 5, where we have some grass and bushes. Let's grab that color by holding your finger on the screen. Now for this brush, I have the opacity set to 100% and the size is at 3%. And now let's just go, let's rotate our screen a bit. Let's just go along that edge and get some of that roughness in there, some irregularities. Looks a bit like bushes. Makes it look more natural. Now we're going to add more texture to this area. So first, let's turn on Alpha Lock. And then for the color, I'd like to add some of this second color in the second row. We're actually going to use these 4 colors in this area. So first, let's use this. Let's zoom out. And then let's first make this brush a little bit bigger. Maybe like 13%. And then let's just go over here, add a bit of this texture. And then we'll move to our other brush. Let's just go to the top to recent brushes so we can find our copperhead brush. And then I'd like to grab this darker color, that first color in the second row. And we are going to add that to this area. Make some of these swiping motions. I also want to add it here. I want this area to be a bit darker. And of course we can just move back and forth between the colors. We can grab that second color again, add some more of that brighter green. And there's another brush I'd like to use, and it's a bit of an unusual brush. It's from the vintage pack over here, the vintage brushes. It's the rad brush, but it's actually pretty great to add texture to bushes and stuff like that. So let's use this green. The opacity of the brush is at 100%, and let's set the size to around 20. And then let's go along this edge with some irregular motions. You can see that that gives a really nice effect. You can also add a little bit over here. And then let's also use a lighter color, this one, third color in the second row. I use that along these edges for some little highlights. And I think it would also be nice to use a stipple brush. I have one in my treasure chest brush pack. It's right here at the top, the Stipple 2.0. If you don't already have this pack, it's totally free. You can get it by going to freefromflow.com. So let's use that Stipple 2.0. Let's set the opacity to 100% and we can set the size to 30. And then we can just go over here and add a little bit of this stipply texture. It will add that suggestion of plants growing here, maybe flowers. I think that looks really nice. Now let's go to our recent brushes again and grab the mountain ash, and we'll grab that darker color over here, that fourth color in the second row. Let's make the brush quite a bit smaller, maybe 5%. And then let's create some bushy shapes here. Just a few. Like this. I think this looks nice. And I think we can start moving to our foreground and work on our foreground grass. We'll actually use a similar technique. So first we'll start by making that edge more rough. So we'll go to layer 3 here. We already have our mountain ash. And we can just pick this color by tapping and holding. And now we need to go along that edge, making it more rough, giving it that texture, making it look more natural. Otherwise it would look way too clean. Then we can turn on alpha lock on the layer. So tap it, turn on alpha lock. And now it's time to add texture and a variety of colors. Now I have all these colors here at the bottom, this range for the grass. So you can just go back and forth between these colors to add more interest over here. Let's start with this darker color, second color in the third row. And let's just choose our mountain ash brush. Make it a bit bigger, 20%, and just go over here. And you can see how different the brush looks from this area when you use it at a small size compared to when you use it at a big size with this nice texture. And it's just a nice base to start with. Now let's start making it smaller, 10%, so we can make some other shapes. And we can also switch to a lighter color, this fourth color in the third row. Let's go over this area, add some of that lighter color. And then I'd also like to use the rad brush with that nice wonky texture. Let's make it a little bit bigger, 30%. Now let's just add some of this lighter color here. And also this darker color, first color in the third row. Like to add that in this corner here where it's darker. Then we'll switch to this color, our base color for this area, third color in the third row. And we'll just make layers of this texture. I'd also like to add a little bit of this color, actually. Second color in the second row, it's slightly more bluish. Let's add a bit of that here. And then finally, perhaps a little bit of this one. Fifth color in the third row. A little bit along the edge. Not too much. And now the next step is to smudge this a little bit. So we'll go to our smudge tool, that's the little finger up here, and we'll go back to my treasure chest brush pack. And I have a little grass brush in here. Here it is, the simple grass brush. And we are going to use it with the smudge tool. Now the opacity or the strength of the smudge is at 80%. And the size is at, well, let's set that to 50. And I will just go along some of these areas. And you don't have to do this in all the areas, but just go over some areas and add this little soft, grassy texture. So leave some gaps. Leave some of that texture. Also create some soft, grassy textured areas. So just some short strokes. Make this area a little bit softer. So you get a nice combination of that soft grass and that texture is still like passing through. And to add even more interest, we can also go back to the brushes and use that Stipple 2.0 brush again. And then grab a light color like this one, fourth color in the first row. Make the brush a little bit smaller, 20%. And then in some areas you can add a little bit of this white, like there are some flowers there. All right, now that we have our grassy plain, it's time to start working on our tree. It's like our main character in the scene. For our tree, we'll use the studio pen again. I still have it under my recent brushes. And for the color, we'll use this one over here. That's the 6th color in the 3rd row. And of course, we also need a new layer. We are going to make a new layer on top of the rest. So tap the plus. And we'll start drawing our tree about here. This will be about the width of the tree trunk. I hope you are enjoying this painting process so far. I just want to tell you that if you want to follow even more Procreate tutorials, if you want to go more in depth, then I just want you to know that at Patreon, I have more than 150 Procreate tutorials, and they range from beginner to more advanced levels, and they cover a whole wide range of subjects. And when you join, you'll get a whole bunch of brushes. You'll be part of an amazing group of people, and you'll be an awesome supporter of this channel, of course. So it would be great if you could check that out once we have finished this landscape. And we'll just make a wonky line going up. Then over here we'll go a bit to the left, and we'll do something similar here, a little bit lower. And for this tree, we are going to draw a bunch of branches, but you don't have to draw every branch of the tree, because a lot, of course, will be covered by the foliage. We'll just make some branches. Make sure that they are thin at the end. And you can make some side branches. It's really not super important, this, because like I said, we are going to add that foliage, but there will be some branches that you'll see through the foliage. We just need to start here. So use less pressure as you move to the ends, because with this brush, the harder you press, the thicker your line will become. And make them a little bit wobbly. Make another one over here. Of course, you could skip ahead a bit and make a screenshot of my finished branches, and then you can use that as a reference. Put it next to yours if you need some guidance there. So it doesn't really matter that much. Just make a bunch of branches crossing each other as well. And pressing hard at the start, and then press lightly. Almost there. Just a few over here. Making sure that we get a closed shape. So make a shape like this at the bottom for those roots, and then we can drag in a color here. Just make sure you fill any of the gaps that are still left. Maybe another branch over here. Let me fill this. We got a nice big tree trunk now. Now for the bottom part, to make it blend a bit more with the grass, we can use that layer mask technique again. So we can tap this layer. By the way, this is the moment that you could make a screenshot of the tree. Now let's tap that layer, give it a mask, and then let's use our mountain ash brush again. Set to black. We'll go in here. That's way too big. Let's make it nice and small, 3%. And you could either use this, but you could also play around with the rad brush. Let's just try that. Or the simple grass brush. Make this smaller. 10% or 9. You just want some suggestion of that grass covering those roots. All right, now let's move on to our foliage. Let's zoom in a little bit. And for our brush, I'd like to use the mountain ash brush again. And let's also make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus. Of course, we need a new layer for this. And for the color, I'd like to use this 8 color in the 3rd row. And let's make sure that our mountain ash brush is not too big. Let's set it to maybe 8%. Let's see. Maybe a little bit smaller. Let's just go for 5. And now we are going to add the foliage. We are going to cover some parts of those branches and make that tree crown. Let's zoom out just slightly so I can see the top. We don't want to touch the edge of our canvas. We want our tree to have some space. So I'll create that outer edge first. We can go to here, then we can have a little gap here. Just make sure that you still see some of those branches through the foliage. But also don't be afraid to cover branches. There we can go a little bit lower. Leave a little gap here. And we can make the brush even smaller, 2%. For even more control. Well, that's too small actually. Let's go for 4. I want some little fluffs. Maybe a little bit higher here. So we get a nice full tree crown. Now we can also make a layer underneath our branches. So we can go to layer 3, then tap the plus, and then we can make a little bit of foliage behind the branches. Fill some gaps. Just want a little bit more over here. And now our process will be a bit the same as what we did with the grass. We are going to go to this top layer, turn on alpha lock. Now we're going to add lighter parts, darker parts. Let's start with some lighter color. This 3rd color in the 3rd row. Let's add this lighter green to the top right areas. And still leave some gaps in between. Just these top parts. And then for our darker color, we'll use this one. That's the 7th color in the 3rd row. I use that over here for some shadow parts. Perhaps a little bit over here as well. Here. Just those undersides. And we can also go to this layer on which we also have a little bit of foliage, turn on alpha lock, and also add a little bit of this darker color here. Now let's play around with our rad brush. Let's go to our top layer again, grab our rad brush and a lighter color. We can grab this one, for instance, 4th color in the 3rd row. Let's make our brush a little bit bigger. 15%, and let's add even lighter parts at the top right areas. Nicely adding more texture. You can also use a little bit of that mountain ash brush and make it bigger. We can set it to 15%, for instance, and slightly go over here, adding some of that rough texture. And then let's go back to our rat brush, go even lighter with this color, 5th color in the 3rd row. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, 7%, and then go over some of these top areas. And add even more of that leafy texture, nice and rough. I think it can also be nice to use this Tipple 2.0 brush with this light color and also add some texture like that. Now I do feel like there might be a bit too much light texture over here, so we can just go back to the Mountain Ash brush, grab a local color, and make the brush a bit smaller, 6%, and go over here a bit to just mute that slightly. Then I'd like to add some leaves in by hand, and I'd like to use an airbrush for that. We'll go to the airbrushing brushes, and we are going to adjust one of the brushes. We'll go to the hard airbrush, and we are going to duplicate that. We'll slide to the left, tap duplicate, then tap that brush, and then I'd like to adjust some of the settings. We will set the jitter to 35% or somewhere around that number. We'll also lower the spacing a bit to 7%. Then we'll go to Apple Pencil and turn up the size here. And we'll lower the flow. So now with pressure from your pen, you will get a bigger size and less variety in flow. So then let's tap done. Now we have our adjusted brush. And let's make it nice and small. For instance, around 15%, opacity at 100. Let's check the size. I think that's nice. Let's turn off Alpha Lock now. We'll tap the layer, turn it off, so we can go outside of our shape. So we can go in here, grab this dark blue, and with our brush, let's actually make the brush even smaller, 8%. With our brush, we can add some of these leaves on the outside. Just some little dots. There's also over here. And because we have that jitter turned up, our brush strokes will be a bit more irregular, varied in size. Let's also grab this light color. Of course, you can also grab it from the color palette, but it can be quicker to just grab color straight from your painting and go over some of those darker areas and add some of those little dots. And let's also grab the lightest color and go around the outside here. And also over the dark areas. I think this creates a really interesting texture for our tree. Of course, we also need some texture for our tree trunk. Let's go to that layer, layer 6. Let's turn on Alpha Lock on that layer. And then let's go to our recent brushes all the way at the top and grab the Copperhead brush. Then for our color, let's first use this one. It's that greenish color, 8 color in the 3rd row. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller, maybe 20%. Let's see, 21, just slipped. And let's add a bit of this lighter green to this left side. This is just a base of extra color. Let's also use this one. That's the 7th color in the 3rd row. It's slightly lighter than the base of our tree, but it will give some subtle texture. And then let's move to this color. That's the 9th color in the 3rd row. And we are going to use it to add light to the right side of our tree. Also the underside a little bit here, right side of this. Now we might need to make our brush a little bit smaller. Let's see. For the trunk it's fine, but for the branches we might need to make it a bit smaller. Also a bit over here. Imagining how the light is going through those leaves. Let's make the brush a bit smaller now, 10%. Go along some of the sides of these branches. Maybe a little dab here. And then we can go slightly lighter with this color, 9th color in the 2nd row. And add a few lighter touches as well. Not too much, just a little bit. There, I think that looks nice. Next, I'd like to add some extra touches to the grass. I do feel like maybe our tree could be even a little bit bigger. And it's actually easy to do that. It's on a separate layer, so we can just select all 3 of the tree layers, then go to the Move and Transform tool, set it to uniform, and then just make it a little bit bigger. And you can move it around, do whatever you like with it. I'll place it here, maybe even a little bit bigger. I think that's great. Let's tap the arrow, get out of here, and let's also add a few rocks to our scene. Let's just make a new layer on top of the others. Let's tap the plus. Let's grab our studio pen again. And for the color, let's grab this one, 4th color in the 2nd row. And we are just going to add some rock formations. Let's start over here. I hope you can see it since it's quite dark here. I'll make a rock shape there. And let's also add one here. Go up, just make some random rocky shapes. And one over here, that's a bit smaller. 2 right next to each other. And maybe one over here. And let's add a small one here. Now let's drag in the color. You can use continue filling here at the top and tap these areas to fill them. And then you can just tap the check mark here. And then let's make a new layer on top. Let's tap the plus, set that new layer to clipping mask. And then we are going to add a lighter color. We'll grab this one, 5th color in the 2nd row. And I will add some lighter parts on the right sides of these rocks. Just like with the trees and with this mountain, the light is coming from the right. So we'll make the light parts there. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. There's some random little shapes on those right sides. You can drag in the color again, use continue filling, and then tap the check mark. Of course, we also need some lighter parts here. Of course, we also need a lighter part here. Let's drag it in. And I also want to use the soft brush. Let's grab it under airbrushing, just our big soft brush. And let's add a bit of this over here. Now we can also add a little bit to the other rocks. Just a bit of a gradient. And then I'd like to remove a little part of this light area. Let's grab our eraser. It's still set to the studio pen. And for instance, we can add a little crack here. And we can add some cracks on this bigger rock. Keeping it very simple. I think this looks good. Now let's make another layer on top. Let's tap the plus, set it to clipping mask, and I will add brighter light. And we'll use this color for that. That's the 9th color in the 2nd row. And for the brush, let's grab our studio pen again. You can find it under recent. And then let's add some brighter highlights. These are very simple rocks. This one. Add this little one. And we can also lighten up the side of this one. Now we just need to make them blend with the grass. We'll use our layer mask trick again. So we'll go to the bottom layer here, tap it, tap mask. And then for our brush, we'll use our simple grass brush from the free treasure chest brush pack. Make sure to set it to black. And then you can go along the underside. Let's make the brush a little bit smaller. Maybe 40%, let's see. I think that's good. We can just go along the edge and make it blend in with the grass. And finally this one. Now we can also add some shadow to our grass. We can go to our grass layer, layer 3. Let's tap the plus, set this layer to clipping mask just to be safe, and then we'll tap the N to change the layer blending mode of this layer. We can set it to multiply so that it will darken anything that's on the layer. We can grab a bluish color like this one, 8 color in the 1st row, and it won't look like blue, but it will darken everything. Check that out. We just use this grass brush, add some shadow to the left sides of these rocks. Just like this. Maybe a little bit more here around the tree. And you have full control because you can tap this M and you can just lower the opacity to make it more subtle. I'll set it to 60%. Now I'd like to nicely frame this scene by adding some leaves in the foreground. Let's make a layer on top of all the others. We can actually merge these rock layers, and if they want to, and you could also merge the tree layers. If you're happy with your tree, you could pinch these together as well. And then at the top, let's tap the plus for a new layer, and for our brush, let's use the studio pen. And for our color, we'll use this one over here, 6th color in the 3rd row. And we are just going to draw in some leaves in the foreground. And some can be floating a bit. You can have a little branch with these simple leaves on them. Maybe some bigger leaves here. So something like this. And then you can just drag in the color and use that continue filling option again. And I use a check mark. And then let's do the same over here. Just some big leaves. Very simple shapes. Little branch here. We really don't have to give this a lot of thought. Just keep it simple. Drag in the color. Tap continue filling. And then let's also add a few over here. Right in this corner. It's something like this. Tap continue filling. There. Now I'd also like to add a few red flowers to our grass. Let's put those on a layer on top of our rocks. Let's tap the plus. And for our brush, let's use our adjusted hard airbrush. And for the color, I don't have a nice reddish color in our color palette, but we can just grab it ourselves. Bit of orangey tone, not too saturated. I think something like this. Try to grab something in this area. And then let's just add some flowers just by adding some of these dots with varying sizes. Just some oranges. And we could also go a little bit darker, more reddish. We can just go over here, go towards the reds and a little bit darker. And then add some of that as well. Maybe even darker. Let's move here. Almost brownish. And these are on a separate layer, so don't worry about them. If you don't like the color, you can easily adjust it. You could even go to the magic wand and to use saturation brightness and play around with that to just change the color of your little flowers. A few in front of these rocks. It adds a nice color contrast. And a few over here. And then the only thing that's left for us to do is creating a dramatic sky. For the clouds, we need to make a new layer on top of our basic sky layer. So let's tap the plus. And for the brush, I'd like to use our adjusted hard airbrush again. And for the color, we'll use this one. Fifth color in the first row. Let's zoom out a little bit. And let's make the brush a little bit bigger, maybe 20%. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's nice. And we are going to make like the base shape of our clouds. So we'll go along here. And our jitter will make sure that we have some wobbly outer edges. And we'll go along here. Make the underside a bit more flat. And then those bumps up top. And then over here, well, we can fill this area. And then over here, let's make some wobbly clouds. Just a bit of a random shape. Something like this. And also these little fluffs coming out. So lots of little extra clouds. This is really going to make it look more dramatic eventually. So lots of little bumps. Vary the pressure of your pen. Some are very wispy and long. Also over here, we can fill that area up with some more of these smaller clouds. Here we might have a long stretched one with some smaller stuff underneath. And now let's continue here. Let's make some wobbles. Underside, mostly flat. And small little clouds surrounding it. Then let's leave a little gap here and continue. Making a bigger cloud here. And over here. Maybe a long stretched one. So I want the bigger clouds to be around the edges. I want this space to be pretty much open. Just some long stretched clouds here. And then over here, we'll go for a bigger one again. And one here. We'll go slightly diagonal. Just like this. And now we have another big one over here. Right at the top. I'm going to start adding all those extra little small clouds. You also follow that bit of that diagonal movement so that everything kind of like pulls you towards that tree. All these I want to say mountains, all these clouds are pointing towards our tree, our little main character. Maybe a few small ones underneath here. I think this looks good. Now we can turn on Alpha Lock on this layer. And now we are going to grab a light color. We'll use this one over here, 6th color in the first row. It's slightly yellowish. And we'll add lighter touches to these clouds along those edges. Some are just entirely light. Let's give this one a light edge. And some light little bumps. And also here. We'll just go along the edge. Make a bit of an irregular shape. And along these. Lighten up these clouds. Just trust the process here. Lighten up this one. The underside of this. Over here as well. The light is coming a bit from over here. So it's lightening up that bottom part of some of these clouds. And then let's also add a darker color. Let's use this one for that. That's the 8th color in the first row. And then let's go over this area, for instance, make another cloud-like shape. Bit over here in the corner. Also over here. Darken up this one. Perhaps over here. And this cloud. Underside of this one and a little bit over here. And let's also darken this a little bit. Maybe over here. Yeah, something like this. Now I'd like to blur this a bit. We'll go to the magic wand and to Gaussian blur, slide to the right, and let's go for something like 7%. And then tap the magic wand again. And now we are going to use our soft brush and add some more touches to our clouds. First, I'd like to add some pinks. Let's grab this color, 10th color in the 3rd row. And on this right side, I'd like to add some of those pink touches. Just making round motions along these clouds, like this. A little bit over here. Then let's also grab this color. That's the 6th color in the 1st row. And add a bit of that yellowish light. Also along these areas. And also a little bit over here. It will nicely bring the clouds together. And we can also make the brush a bit smaller, like 4%. And we can lighten up these little clouds. We can add a bit of a lighter edge here. You have a bit more control when it's so small. We could even make some of these clouds even lighter. We could grab this color, 4th color in the 1st row. Make these even brighter. Then we also need some extra light in our sky. So we need a new layer in between these. So first tap layer 1 and tap the plus. Then let's grab this yellow here, 10th color in the 2nd row. And let's make our brush a bit bigger again, like 12%. And let's go over here. Add some yellow to the sky. Like this. And let's go lighter with this one, 6th color in the 1st row. For an even lighter touch over here. A nice light glow. Then I'll switch to the pink. That's the 10th color in the 3rd row. And we'll add a bit of that over here. Then for a final touch, I'd like to add some sparkle, some like magical stars to our sky. We'll do that by tapping the plus first, make a new layer. Then we'll go to the luminance brushes. They are over here, and we'll use the light pen. Then for the color, let's grab a nice blue. I think this one should work, or maybe this one. 3rd color in the 1st row. And for the size, I'd like to set this brush to 50%. And opacity is at 100. Let's check this color is nice. Yeah, this is perfect. Then we're just going to add some stars. And with this brush, the harder you press, the bigger the star will become. We're just going to add some of these nice bright stars, adding to that magical paradise-like feel for this piece. It's like otherworldly. Just some random areas. And that's it, you have made it to the end. I really enjoyed creating this piece with you. I hope you are proud of your result. Don't forget to share it, and then I would love to see you next time for the next tutorial. Thank you for watching.